welcome to Simply Sarah. I am Sarah Stockham, your host, and I am so pleased that you are here, ready to expand your mind, ready to think about things a little bit differently. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity today to bring in Dr. Tara Perry. It's just lovely to have you in studio and to share your wisdom with our audience around the world. How did you get to where you are today? Because you have so many degrees and you are helping so many people. And it's just so inspiring. In fact, I'm going to take myself off screen so you can just share. It's wonderful.
Well, Sarah, thanks so much. It's great here to be with you. Goodness. Well, yeah, lots unfolded in life over the years. I'd say my foray into holistic medicine and kind of taking the reins of our own healing started with my dad. He was on the board of the Price Pottinger Foundation, which is one of the oldest nutritional foundations in the world. And actually, I watched him, or I knew of a time where he spoke with a friend of his who was in the hospital, and this was a very wealthy man, and he had 4 of the top doctors in New York taking stabs at his liver and running all these tests. And he called up my dad, who's not a doctor, and said, "Hey, help! They're running all these tests on me, and I don't know what to do, and they don't know what's wrong." And my dad, who was knowledgeable about all this stuff, said, "Well, were you taking any medications before this started?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I was taking blah blah blah." And my father pulled the PDR off the shelf because back in those days we didn't have the internet. And the side effect of blah 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 was jaundice. He had become very jaundiced, and so this man was astounded that 4 top doctors in New York City didn't ever ask this question. And then he said, "Well, what's wrong?" And he says, "Well, it messes with your gut flora." And he said, "Well, what should I do about it?" And he says, "Well, eat some yogurt." So the guy checks himself out of the hospital and eats yogurt and solves the problem. So I did learn early on that there's other solutions to things. After I graduated from UCLA, I spent several years in the entertainment business and ended up at one of the top talent agencies in Hollywood, but didn't feel congruent. I didn't feel like I was really making a massive difference in people's lives for the better. So when I found out my homeopath was healing people really well, I said, what would I do if I want to do what you did? So that was how I dove into holistic medicine, then spent 23 years in doing acupuncture and nutritional medicine in Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, and Belmont Shore. And then one day a patient came in who had a bad trauma background, and she was all excited about this process she was doing. And when I found out it was based in hypnosis, I said, "Oh, sign me up," because I always had a huge curiosity and admiration for the mind and the mind's ability to heal. And that was the beginning of understanding how, when you interact with the subconscious mind, which is processing 40 million bits of information per second, as opposed to 40 bits of information per second. I mean, the comparison's not even in the same universe, that people were able to get over things like stress, anxiety, even allergies to everything but 5 foods, back pain for 40 years from having been in a motorcycle accident with a broken back, being attacked by a Rottweiler and having gone through 6 jaw surgeries and developed a choking disorder. So all these crazy things were responding really well to going in and finding out what those blockages were in the subconscious mind that were preventing healing in the first place. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
You have touched so many lives and all the work that you have done. And it seems that there is a lightness, a brightness about all of the work that you have done, in particular, the space of hypnosis. When you began into this work, what were you hoping to find as you were taking the courses? And then what did you find?
What a great question. I guess I just had this innate curiosity. I've been following the work of Joe Dispenza for, probably over a decade now. He wrote Becoming Supernatural and Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And he's probably doing more than anybody at looking at the science of what's going on as we get into this beautiful heart and brain coherence. You led me through a beautiful process before we even came on your program, where you connected the mind, the heart, and the gut, which are like 3 different brains that are going on in our bodies. I recently interviewed Gil Headley, and he's a neuroanatomist who actually shows people what these neurological pathways look like in our body, and we are wired for these things to connect and communicate with each other. But it's the essential here that really that work.
Uh-huh. And so, Joe Dispenza, a friend of mine, I just spoke to her this morning, was at the Heart Math Conference, and he was there speaking. And didn't know if you were also, some of the words that you used made me think that perhaps you were also familiar with heart math.
Very much. They were really at the forefront of all this work. Joe and all kinds of other people dove into that, and when you see the effects that it has in people's lives for creating balance, creating a sense of wellness, the mind is just so fascinating. I interviewed Chris Neubauer, who wrote No Self, No Problem. And we looked at the right and left hemisphere and the science that was done when they separated the corpus callosum, which is the separation between the right and left hemisphere. And they were able to look and see what each hemisphere did. And our left side, is valuable in that it categorizes and it counts, it is able to put things into boxes. But the bad side is if it doesn't know the answer to something, it just makes something up.
Right.
And it's also responsible for stress, because if our version of what we think reality should be doesn't match what our perception of our own reality is, then we experience a lot of stress.
I had never thought about that particular connection. I know that the left side of the brain is very logical. If you're going to solve a math problem, there's going to be a lot of the left side of the brain working, which is why as a teacher, we would also be teaching to use math in stories to be able to access then the right side of the brain, right? To be able to get more of a larger landscape of the brain working towards finding the answer and having it make more sense because it was in a real life problem. But I hadn't thought about the connection between if it doesn't make sense, then it just creates all kinds of havoc of what it's going to do, but also that space of this isn't how it's supposed to be. And then the reaction of the body to go, oh, this is not how it's supposed to be. Therefore, I'm going to go into fight or flight or, fib, flop, flee, all of the different ones that people can go into as a result of feeling a very personal stress response, because stress, although the stimuli can be out there for everybody, not everybody reacts to it in the same way. So stress really is a very individualized experience, I believe.
I love the quote by Alan Kay, a change in perception is worth 80 IQ points. And,
Yes.
and there's so much value, because you're right, the two different people can go through the same traumatizing experience. And I put that in air quotes because, for one person, it can actually be the wind underneath their wings and guide them to better, more powerful, more self-empowered states of being. And the other person can carry it as a weight on their back and get dragged down by it. So just by changing perception, and again, when you're working with that major, beautiful, big subconscious mind, that's 90 to 95% of our brain that's processing millions of bits of information per second. It's just so much more powerful.
Yeah, it is. So going back to the question of what did you want to learn and what then did you learn, what were some of the pieces that you brought out of that you were able to connect in with acupuncture work that you had done and other things that you were already really versed in, especially around your dinner table at home growing up, right? With your father as being somebody who had such a deep knowledge already. So what were some of the pieces in that you were able to connect in with what you already knew?
Yeah, the big surprise takeaway was how much more quickly and more powerfully you could bring about change. When I was doing acupuncture, acupuncture is wonderful, and I was able to reverse paralysis, help women get pregnant that, were some of the most difficult cases that some of the pregnancy outfits in Beverly Hills were experiencing, get them over stress and anxiety. However, when you go to the subconscious mind and remove the programming that's causing the problem in the first place, it's kind of like driving through life with, your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. It's exhausting and it's inefficient. Like, for example, the fellow I worked with who had broken his spine in the motorcycle accident, he was all excited when he found out I was an acupuncturist. I said, you've done acupuncture, you've done chiropractic. Why don't we just go to Command Central? He was an advanced Dr. Joe person, so he knew the power of his subconscious mind already. In just 2 sessions, he didn't have the pain anymore. So those are the kind of crazy responses you can get when you remove the obstacles that are causing the difficulties in the first place. I always say people are like an iPhone 16 operating on iPhone 4 technology.
Yes. That's such a great visual for me. What is it that causes these blockages in the brain? Doesn't the brain want us to be successful?
Such a great question. That reptilian brain, that part of us that wants to be safe, they did this study with mice, and I hate animal studies. We need to get consent forms signed from these sweet little things before we do things to them. But they put an electrical shock on the animal and then exposed it to the smell of cherry blossoms, and it didn't take long before just the smell of cherry blossoms elicited the nervous reaction in the body.
Right.
That's understandable. That's just Pavlovian. We all know that. But what was a surprise was the children of these mice had the same response without ever being exposed to the electrical shock. The children's children and the children's children. It took 3 generations for this to be deprogrammed from the cells.
Yeah.
So I love the work of Patrick Connor. He says that our blocks are subconscious, multi-generational, and pre-verbal.
Mm-hmm.
So you have issues on that level, it's really difficult to unwind them. I've had so many people that have been through decades of therapy and were still struggling, feeling like they had invisible hooks in them, pressing up against invisible walls, just all these invisible battles going on that weren't relieved by talk therapy or medication or meditation or whatever. And then when we go into the subconscious mind and they're able to see, oh, okay, this is what got nailed in there, and this is why it's there, this is what it wants, this is what it needs, then they'll be willing to change. But it needs a clear pathway. It has to see that what it's hanging on to is like a hot poker. Because with the habitual programming, that reptilian brain, it thinks that what's familiar is safe. Back in the day, the tribe was safe. It didn't even matter if the tribe was crazy, if it was miserable, whatever. It was better than the unknown outside, because the unknown outside was another tribe that might, kidnap you, that might do bad things to you. It could be wild animals that would eat you. So the unknown was big, scary.
Yeah. The unknown was death. It was absolute loss of life. And so losing the community, losing the tribe was losing everything.
Right.
And so you're right. It didn't matter how crazy it was. And so going back to the study then, you're talking about, by 3 generations. And I'm hearing that from the maternal side, from the mom side. But what happens when the trauma is in the paternal? Does it also then carry into the children, or do you know?
I can't say that I'm a total expert in that area, but it does appear that we get those imprints and blueprints from both parents.
Yes.
In the DNA, there's just incredible amounts of information that come 50-50 from each parent. So it would be logical to think it would come from both parents.
Yeah. Which is really amazing to me, because I think that we are so far away from World War II. And yet, when you think about the 3 generational part, we're not that far away, right?
What's interesting about trauma? It can be stupid little things. It's really shocking to me. I've worked with veterans who had 100 on their PTSD scores, and they had done all the military stuff, and they were still having panic attacks, still not able to focus. And after 2 sessions, they're like, it can't be this easy. And I'm like, yeah, it actually can be. Yeah. And they didn't go back to the stuff in the military. They went back to childhood. Mm-hmm. Because usually between the ages of 2 and 10, we're just sponges.
Yeah.
And so, for example, I've worked with people that don't a lot of worthiness issues. So one particular woman, she's a wonderful oral surgeon, extremely skilled, wonderful. People love her, but she didn't feel comfortable asking for money. So she would go home stressed and not balancing the books very well. And we just went back, and it was an episode where she was doing her homework. Her older sister is even more brilliant than she is. So her dad said something that wasn't particularly kind. She thought, okay, I'm not worthy. And she carried that with her into her work. And so we just rewired it. She was able to go back, see, okay, this is what this is. This is why it's there. See that she's the iPhone 4 and, really is an iPhone 16.
Yes. Yes.
And it's just it's literally programming. And once you get those neural pathways to change, and in functional MRIs, and well, not that, but there's measuring devices and viewing devices that you can actually see neurons grow in the brain.
Yes.
And it's fascinating because it used to be thought that once the adult brain was formed, that was it. You weren't going to get any change. That's totally not true.
Correct.
You can absolutely learn new things. So it's a matter of deprogramming the neurons firing and wiring together. You have a clear thought and a strong emotion; those get stuck together. That's Donald Hebb's law from 1948.
Yeah.
And you just fire and wire, fire and wire, fire and wire, because that's what the brain knows how to do. And
Right.
it's not going to change that until it goes, okay, that's a hot poker, that's hurting me. I'll drop that, but it needs that clear path from where it is to where it wants to go, because change is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So you need that pathway. So I make an audio tape that comes out after we do the session. There's a pathway that becomes clear after we've connected with the subconscious mind for about 2 hours. And then I give them a recording so they listen to that each and every night as they drift off to sleep, so that they can get that upgrade from the iPhone 4 to the iPhone 16.
Yes.
And then I give them a high performance journal so that they can track their progress, because what we put our attention on gets our energy. And it's cliche, but it's true. Wherever that energy's going, wherever that attention's going, we're going to get more of that.
Yes.
And for so many of us, and I'd say for myself for decades and decades, and to some degree, I'm sure it's still going on because I'm human. But there's just these unconscious patterns, questions that we're asking ourselves that aren't serving us.
Right.
And you want to start asking better questions, and being aware of what those patterns are that aren't serving you, so that you can install ones that do serve you.
Yes. Beautiful. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, Dr. Tara, I'd love for you to talk about the people who are concerned about somebody else helping to rewire them, that space of the other person. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I am the founder and owner of Lamano Art. I began this business over 20 years ago. I specialize in paintings of all kinds. I make murals, portraits, and live paintings. My specialty is color and also telling a story. Some of the work that Lamano Art does are calligraphy pieces, wedding invitations, sign work, and sculptures like fairy doors. I'm open to working with anyone on any idea. Please feel free to contact me at your convenience, and I look so forward to talking to you. Thank you.
I am loving this conversation, Dr. Tara, because you have covered so much already and tied in different pieces. Let's go to this space where people who are listening are considering hypnotherapy. They have something in their life that they keep stubbing their toe on, so to speak, something that they feel like is holding them back. They've done other things. Hypnotherapy is becoming quite a wide conversation. It's no longer a quiet something that would only happen in certain places. It's become so much wider. Let's talk about safety in allowing someone else permission to come in to rewire someone's brain.
That's a really great question. A lot of people have a huge fear about that. That's largely unfounded, because of Hollywood and Las Vegas. People have gone to these shows and they've seen people, the stage hypnotism where people are clucking around like chickens and doing embarrassing things. So there's this misperception that, you turn your mind over to somebody else and they have all this control. And I also like to say it really should be called dehypnosis, because the bad news is you're already hypnotized. The good news is there's ways to rewire that. And I also say I can't make you think anything you don't want to think or believe anything you don't want to believe. I'm just a tour guide. I'm just literally illuminating a path that you couldn't see before. And you're walking it. So you're actually having heightened clarity rather than decreased clarity. And most of us, like right now, we're in the beta brainwave state. So it's a high brainwave state. We're able to multitask, be aware of all kinds of things. When you drop into an alpha state, there's alpha, beta, delta, theta. Two are awake and two are asleep. In an alpha state, that's when we're relaxed, we are daydreaming, we're drifting in and out of sleep, or a light theta, which is a light sleep. And when your brain waves are slowed down, then you have better access to the subconscious mind. It's very difficult to navigate on your own because, like when we wake up out of a sleep, it's very difficult to remember your dreams. Um, uh, Subconscious by definition is below the level of your consciousness,
Right.
but there's that lovely in between space where you're just relaxed. If you don't like the term hypnosis, you literally can call it a relaxed conversation. It's not the people think, okay, well, I have to be so under, and I put that in air quotes as well, that I'm drooling, my legs falling asleep, I don't know who I am, I don't know where I am, and it's just not that. And I always tell people, because I work with people typically 3 sessions over 90 days, because I find there's layers to things, and I don't want to just give somebody a Band-Aid fix to something. I want somebody to really get to the issue and resolve it. And I find that 90-day period is a really good amount of time. And the session's deep in because your brain starts to figure out how it works. Somebody might be a little guarded in the first session. That's fine. The right information will still come out. But as we move ahead, the brain's going to go, oh, okay, I get how this works. And it's just, there's just more of a willingness for it to open and go deeper.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate also that you do it over 3 sessions over 3 months, 90 days. I think that that 90-day space, there's just something about it. It's if you start at the beginning of a season, you get the whole season, right? If you are in business, typically people will talk about 90-day goals that they have. But I also think that there's something really unique about the 90-day journey that allows the brain a different space to be able to work, rather than we have 2 hours, we're getting this done right now, kind of a, who will I be when I wake up tomorrow? I think it just gives a different layering to that. Plus, it also gives opportunities for asking different kinds of questions, because between those spaces, questions do arise, either internally or other people saying, hey, what about things that you hadn't thought about? And so that space of also having it be a gentle over that period of time. When you talk about these spaces of hypnosis, are you doing it only in person then, or are you also online?
Well, you talk about something I was surprised to find out, because I was brick and mortar when I was in Southern California, and COVID came along, and that was a real blessing for me because I went virtual, and it's just as effective, I would say, to do it online. In fact, there's actually some benefits to doing it online. I had a rare opportunity to do both, because normally when somebody lives within a certain radius of my house, they just come here. And I love that. I love to see people in person. That's my preference by far. But being able to do this online is incredibly good. And so somebody I usually would see online, and she's actually another therapist. For whatever reason, she wasn't able to come in that day, so we did it on Zoom, and she actually liked it better. So there's pluses and minuses. So you can't lose.
Yeah. I appreciate that space also as I do Reiki with clients. In person is just so lovely and delicious, I think. But that space of having it virtual, people can choose a time that works for them where they don't have to get up afterwards and can just go right to sleep. And I remember I had one client who liked to come in her oversized clothes so that she could just drive about 2 blocks to go home. And I was always very, very careful to make sure that she was really awake, even though by this point it's dark outside, for her to get home safely, because you can go into very, very deep places in any of these different modalities. And so there's that beautiful, you can just drift off to sleep and stay asleep and receive the beautiful benefit of that, not having to wake up and having to drive afterwards. So there's something about that I really appreciate. In this space also of talking about the hypnotist, the sessions that you've had where you've seen these dramatic changes for people, are they the ones that typically will send other people to you then? Do you build your business primarily by word of mouth? Talk a little about the business part of your work.
That's a great question. I have had a lot of people come from other practitioners. So that could be nurse practitioners, doctors, surgeons, really across the board. People who I've worked with, sometimes life is strange. People
Yes.
come from the most unlikely places. I mean, I had somebody that I hired for some work, had a relative, have an issue, and they called me up the other day. So you really never know.
Yeah.
I think if you're in your dharma, I love that term.
Mhm.
If you're doing what your human design is, uh,
Mhm.
the world supports you. And so whatever method works for you. I mean, I have my own podcast. I started podcasting because of all these fabulous results that people were getting with stress and PTSD, and insomnia is another great um, a side effect of getting that heart and brain coherence is that people sleep better.
Yes.
So I had this gal from London who hadn't slept well for 7 years. She only slept 3 to 4 hours a night. She was about to lose her mind. She had done regular sleep therapy. It didn't do anything for her. And she said, I don't know how you did it. You didn't even mention sleep in the process. I didn't have to. I just had to remove the emotions that were preventing her from sleeping in the first place.
And what were some of those emotions?
So in her case, I don't remember. But typically there are things like, anxiety, stress, not feeling worthy enough. In fact, I start out, actually, I'll reach over here and
Yes.
grab my magic wand. I have my trusty magic wand that I give people either virtually or in person. And I say, what are 3 feelings you'd give anything to not feel anymore? So the usual answers I get are stress, anxiety, I feel unworthy, not good enough. Sometimes it's guilt, sometimes it's anger. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And then I say, well, how long you've been feeling it? Where is it in your body? What color is it? How big is it? What temperature is it? And a lot of times people are like, oh, nobody ever asked me that before. And then, okay, we wave the magic wand, and what are 3 feelings you'd give anything to feel consistently? And so I call that my GPS conversation, because it's taking you from where you are to where you want to go. I mean, again, if you call up a travel agent and say, I want to get to New York, what are they going to say? Well, where are you coming from?
Exactly. Yes. And they're not going to send you to Toronto if you're trying to get to New York.
Exactly. And if you're wishing you're in Kansas City, it's, you're in LA, you're still going to have to go from LA.
Still, yes.
Again, if you access that beautiful, amazing subconscious mind that's doing so much for you, lovingly, reliably for you every second of every moment. I mean, think about it. We have 2 million new cells coming online every second.
Yes.
What are those little guys hearing from you? Are they hearing, oh my God, how am I going to get through this day? Oh my God, I have a horrible relationship. Oh my God, how am I going to find a relationship? Or are they going to hear, wow, how do I express my uniqueness even more today? How do I love myself even more today? How do I honor myself even more today? Truly, you want better answers, you got to ask better questions.
Better questions every single time. I so agree with you on that. In this space of, as we are going to sleep, as we are waking up in the morning, being able to listen to some type of a conversation, some type of a meditation, what are ones that you have found to be helpful, or what are things that it would be wise for them to look for and things for them to potentially avoid as they are considering this? Because the brain is so malleable in those places.
Yeah. If somebody's looking for hypnotherapist, I would definitely say, make sure you're comfortable in your gut. If you feel not comfortable, if it doesn't feel like a good fit, it's okay. There's other people out there.
Yes.
Because there's, like acupuncture, like chiropractic, like, violinists. There's a large variety out there. It's not one size fits all. And it's important that you feel seen and comfortable, and your gut says, okay, I'm safe, it's okay.
Yeah.
And, so that you don't have that wondering. And what was your other question? I think I went off track there.
I just want to come back and absolutely agree with you on that. I think it's in the world of Reiki as well. interview the person who is going to be helping you. This is not like you have an HMO and they say, oh, we have a slot for you here and you have to take the slot if you're going to see anybody in the next 3 weeks. It's not like that. There are so many people who are out there who are available. And if you have something that you are wanting to work on and you're really clear about that, that can be helpful to help guide the questions before you commit to working with somebody.
And if you're not clear about what you want, that's also a symptom of trauma, because learned helplessness is another symptom that people come to me a lot with.
Wow.
And sometimes people are just numb. They're like, what's wrong with me? I just can't feel anything. That's
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
And then what would you like to feel? And then, imagine how would your life be different if if that was your new default?
Yeah.
So I have a whole clarity thing. If people go to consultera.com, they can just click the Let's Talk. I have 10 questions there that people can gain clarity and set up a time to talk to me if that feels like a fit for them.
I love that you have that space, inviting our audience to come in. I also love that you have questions that will help them to kind of percolate through where they are and what they are thinking. Let's talk about traumatic brain injury. You have been able to help people in that space. Have you found that a certain area of the brain is that's been injured is easier to help, or are there symptoms that you have found that nearly every single time seem to go away after a traumatic brain injury?
I haven't worked a ton with that. I did work recently with a law student who had suffered a traumatic brain injury, and he did very well. I can't say I have a huge population of that I've worked with. However, pretty much anything that's going on with the body, if you're not in heart and brain coherence, you just have less tools available to heal. So there's a book by Margaret Blackie years ago. She's a famous homeopath. She was homeopath to the Queen of England, and she wrote a book called The Patient, Not the Cure. And the essence of that was, the symptom picture is maybe a secondary to the stress picture. So if your fire alarm is going off in your house all the time, how much can you heal? How much can you sleep? How much can you? So that's the sympathetic nervous system. And so what this is so brilliant at is dialing that back so that you're in the parasympathetic nervous system, where your immune system can function, your digestive system, your function, your hormonal system. And there, anything can heal better than if it's in stress.
So true. I'm just soaking that in because there is that idea of the patient and the cure, right? The symptoms, and looking specifically at who the person is and what their individual complaints are, but listening for the person, not the you are this. And I was speaking recently with Gary Barnes, who's an international coach for speakers, and he was talking about something, and he was coming in for a surgery that he had shared about on Facebook. So I'm not putting anything out there that people don't know about. But in the conversation, I brought up something, and he said, "Oh, that's a diagnosis. That's not who I am." And in that moment, the light bulb turned on for me. How when a person who's dressed in white, it has the clipboard and says, "And this is what's wrong with you," that all of a sudden the person says, "Oh, something's wrong with me." And they take it on and they put on whatever that happens to be, with any limitations or any side effects that they think about when they think about whatever that happens to be, rather than saying, "This is what somebody has noticed about me who has a lot of education. I get to decide how I'm going to interact with that information. Do I want to get a second opinion? Do I want to go talk to somebody who's not in a white coat, but who's very learned? How do I want to move forward with that?" That space of agency, I think, is such a beautiful and important place in this spectrum of healing, of diagnoses and conversations about health.
Once you name it and claim it, you own it. And
Yep.
that's not always in your best interest.
Right.
Let's see, I interviewed Ellen Langer. She's the tenured psychologist at Harvard who does all these crazy great studies on how the brain impacts your physiology and your world. I mean, fabulous work. There's Mind Over Medicine by Lisa Rankin, I think is her name. and Joe Dispenza, that people are doing the medically impossible now by dropping into heart and brain coherence, basically blocking out uh, all of that noise from what doesn't serve them and completely focusing on their outcome with love and joy and coherence. And I mean, I just interviewed Dr. Hemal Patel, and we talked about he's the lead scientist for Dr. Joe. And there's a woman who had her rectum surgically removed, and she realized right after the surgery that she had made a mistake. An additional mistake is that it apparently was a misdiagnosis. But she realized she had no other choice except to regrow her rectum, and she did.
Amazing.
It took her a year and a half, but she just kept dropping into heart and brain coherence, being in total love and gratitude, and that's challenging when you're sitting on a toilet all the time because you're basically incontinent.
Right.
And that was medically documented. So that's wonderful. I know 2 people in that community have regrown a thyroid. And Dr. Joe didn't even believe this when it was happening.
Wow. Wow.
Until he saw the proof of it. So it's pretty exciting what the body is capable of doing when we're in heart and brain coherence. And what I found so delicious about, Dr. Joe's work is one to many. My work is one to one. So a lot of people in the Dr. Joe community, they love that work. Often they have something specific to them that they want to quickly resolve. So they'll reach out to me and we'll work together to, get them from that level that they're at to where they want to go.
Yeah. I love that you don't see that it's competition at all. That in your business, you know what you offer. You are clear about that. You offer people questions, 10 questions to be able to help them determine where they are in that process. You offer an opportunity to have a conversation to see if it's a good fit. But there isn't any energy about you that's a space of I'm in competition with anybody else. Share how you got to that space.
That's a great question. So when I first had my first office in Santa Monica, I was with 2 practitioners. They were both chiropractors. And the energy in the office was so lovely because none of us had an ego about, scorekeeping and, who referred how many patients to who. We just basically, it was very patient oriented. If the patient was getting better, great. We'd keep going with that. If they sort of plateaued, then we'd, say, well, maybe, working with this person will help you. And so we just didn't have any ego about it. And I find that actually rare in the medical community, sadly rare.
Yes.
And I've been in other offices that did not have that going on. It's a beautiful thing. In fact, it was so noticeable that the UPS guy he says, "Oh my God, this is the happiest place on earth." This is
I love that.
Because there's this lightness when you're not living in lack, and you're just like, I mean, I am a huge believer in the golden rule. I think we are living in a quantum reality, and however you treat somebody else. I'm interviewing Daniel Brinkley today. He's the guy that was struck by lightning, and twice, and had 3 near-death experiences. And there's commonalities. He worked with Dr. Moody. You get a life review when you're done with this life.
Yes.
And he had, at least 2 life reviews. I'm not sure from his 3rd death whether he had one that time too. But in the first part of his life, he was, he did lots of bad things to people and was very selfish. And so his life review was extremely painful because he got to experience all the pain that he inflicted on other people. And then after he had died and got struck by lightning, and had this whole vision about creating healing centers, he worked in hospice and, really went above and beyond from his heart to help other people. When he had a second life review, it was actually rather pleasant.
How lovely, right? Just to be able to see the difference.
So I totally believe in the golden rule. It exists in every religion. So I really, if I have a tool that I can give somebody, whether it's a book, I've got a whole reading section on my website, consulttara.com or nashvillehealer.com. So those are a lot of the books that I've, I really need to update it because I'm really a bookaholic. And I love to say we stand on the shoulders of giants because this is really a lot of cool activity going on. Lots of people have had near-death experiences. They're reporting about it. They have an elevated sense of being. Some of them come back with additional gifts on working with people and healing people.
Yes. I love this space of you so freely offering also lovely books for people to be able to read. So, and again, for the UPS person, going back to that space of him not just noticing it, but I love that he actually spoke the words. So he wasn't just seeing the difference, he was communicating that. And I think that that's such a empowering thing to do for the UPS person as well as the words, sharing that blessing of when I walk in here, I feel different. There's just something that's lovely here. And that's not necessarily dissing on other people or other places that he's going, but just acknowledging that the air in here feels lighter and how other people are able to go, oh, yeah, I noticed that too. And the expansion that happens.
Here we are 20 years later, still talking about that comment. How cool is that?
Yes, exactly.
When he said that
yes.
It would be on a program 20 years later.
Right. And also that we are still thinking of him in high regards, right? I wasn't there. I didn't, but I have such high regards for him as well. So this is actually continuing to appreciate, when we think about real estate appreciating, it expands or it grows in value. We are appreciating him. We are growing in value who he is, and the energy of him as we talk about it. I mean, how lovely is that as well? So all the different levels that go along with that.
Everybody listening is that you can have that same impact on every single person that you come across today.
Exactly. Wow. Coming back to this space of that quiet conversation, that slowing down, the heart-brain coherence, the allowing the heart that sees, and they have done the research with this with heart math, that the heart is able to see into the future. And I don't know how far it can see into the future, but that space of being able to sense what's going to happen next, allowing that space to be connected in with the brain, with the mind, and the brain being what's actually inside the skull, the mind being the place that we think. That's how I see it. I'll let you speak to that before I go on. Is that how you see it as well?
Well, I interviewed Mark Gober, who wrote Into Upside Down Thinking. He was a summa cum laude graduate from Princeton who went to work on Wall Street, made a bunch of money, but wasn't happy because he was a materialist. Then he started listening to podcasts on spirituality and realized, oh my gosh, the mathematics on these phenomena are bulletproof. How come they're not teaching this at Princeton? So, what he shows in this mathematically through telepathy, precognition, children being born with full knowledge of a previous lifetime that they had no connection to whatsoever, it proves that consciousness isn't located in the brain. We're like TV receivers that are picking up a signal.
Yes.
So it, just like a TV would change or a radio would change frequency, if we change our frequency, we have better access to picking up better signals.
Yes. I remember being in a space and somebody quickly looking at me to gauge my reaction. It's something that years ago would have bothered me and that I didn't even notice until the person on this side began to react and was expecting me to react. And I kind of giggled a little bit because I was like, oh, I've changed, right? I've changed my antenna. I didn't see it. Now that you bring it to my attention, yes, I acknowledge that happens internally, but I'm not going to acknowledge it outside because I don't want that to continue to grow. But those places where we are given, I call them chapter tests, right? When we do the work, we don't necessarily see the difference that we are creating or that we are being, that we are becoming. And yet life will every now and then give us an opportunity to have these chapter tests where we go, oh, I grew. I had a conversation this week with somebody who's been a high-level coach and is working in a different capacity right now for a period of the next 5 years as she continues to coach, but she's doing it in a different way. Gets a phone call from her stepdaughter saying, hey, Dad's not doing well, and had a 60-mile drive and got into her car, did some deep breathing, got herself in a calm place, and reached out to 3 of us to say, this is what's going on, send Reiki, send healing, send good vibes. And then chose, as she drove, just felt so comfortable and calm, not knowing what she was coming into. But she was just saying how amazed she was on that. And again, that phone call was a chapter test. Her husband's going to be just fine. They were able to reverse all of the different things that had happened in that moment of crises. But life gives us these opportunities for us to go, oh, in the past, I would have acted so differently. And here in this space, I'm giving the opportunity to see that I'm using the tools that I have been given. And so, in that space of that brain coherence and that heart coherence, coming into a place where there's no longer the dissonance, or the dissonance is not as often, allows um, a different type of movement in our life, because our brain we do have neuroplasticity. People who have had strokes can learn to walk again. And you talked about the number of cells that we are creating every single day. I love that space of talking about what are we speaking into them. Do you believe that our internal thoughts are as powerful as our external words?
Oh yeah. Well, I'll mention another example. Well, and as to triggers, that's another thing that people seek out my work for. They'll if they're triggered by whatever and they don't know how to change that. In fact, I've had parents that were triggered by children, and they've struggled with that for
Mhm.
years, and it's something stuck in the subconscious, and it's usually easy to reprogram. Um, uh, Shoot, you were just asking me about something, and I was going to clarify on that. What were we just talking about?
We were talking about the brain, the mind, and then we were talking about, I get so caught up in the moment that I sometimes will lose what we just talked about. Um,
Me
we
too.
were,
I had two things I was going to add, and I only got to one of them.
that's okay. We'll come back to it if it's supposed to be. We'll come back into this space.
Oh, I remember. So you asked me. Okay, so when my mother, she was walking down the street in Long Beach
Yes.
at age 89. Thank God she's in great health, but she hit a bike rack and it dropped her to her knees. She smashed her kneecap into 13 pieces at age 89. And anybody that works in hospitals, medicine knows that at that age that can be a life-ending injury. So as soon as she was out of surgery, I said, "Mom, take a picture of yourself. I know you feel terrible, but you're going to be the fastest healing case on record." And so I made her two audios, one to speed heal the patella and another to convince the muscles that they were working out, even though they were immobilized, because that's a big problem with older people who have an injury and they're immobilized is the muscle atrophy.
Right.
That ends up killing them because they are destabilized and they'll fall a second time, and that ends up harming them, perhaps fatally. So in 3 months she was going up and down stairs. In 6 months she was going up and down ladders.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
I found it very helpful for things like headaches and migraines, especially anything that's worse with stress or tension,
Mm,
because again, that fire alarm is just going off in the subconscious
yeah.
mind. And when you dial that back, there's just so much more available for your own healing.
I think that one of the deepest pieces of wisdom that I have um, been shared is to become so aware. And it's a journey. This is not an overnight piece, but to become aware when you begin to tighten, because the beginning to tighten is the stimuli coming in. And if we can catch it in that space, from a resting heart rate, we have 10 seconds that we can actually talk back to the brain or talk to the brain and not have to go into the fight or flight, all the catecholamines that happen. And then if you have that happen, then you need to have later on other things happening in the body to push all the salt and sugars and fats back out to the extremities. And so um, that space of becoming aware that things are beginning to tense up is such a critical piece for me, because it helps me then to use my five senses to see what is it around me. Is it a smell? Is it something that I haven't noticed before? Is it something brand new that I'm just beginning to connect in with, that my body is reacting to for whatever reason? And like I said, for me, it's a journey in that space. Perhaps you would say that if we did um, hypnotherapy on it, that that would open up the gate differently for me. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think there is a little bit of a dance between having the experience and access to go in and just deal directly with the subconscious mind. That's been the thing that's lit me up in the last many years. Um, on the other hand, we do spend most of our time in this, conscious beta level. So if the practice of noticing when things are tightening is very useful. It's just they're two different. I would say they're kind of apples and oranges,
Hmm. I,
but both incredibly useful.
yes, yes. Get different vitamins from each one of them.
Yeah, you don't want to, just depend on hypnotherapy and go unconscious the rest of the time. It's really about becoming more conscious, as many ways as you can. So it's not like there's, it's not. And if you do work directly with your subconscious mind, it's not like that's a substitute for exercising or meditating or eating well. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle.
I really appreciate you saying that. Um, because I think it's really important to be seeing it as it's one of the spokes on a wheel of wellness. And it's an incredibly important one. But the other pieces, we still need to be drinking our water. We still need to be looking at our sleep patterns. We still need to be moving around, still getting sunshine, still eating our fruits and veggies. All those other pieces that do play into that. I knew somebody who was doing some work on the brain, and they really encouraged them to eat a lot of salmon and take a lot of omega-3s before they began to do the work. Is that something that you encourage in your protocol as well?
I have had people definitely that I've worked with who responded very well to omega-3s. You do want to make sure they come from a clean source, especially if it's a fish oil thing, because there's a lot of mercury contaminants. I knew a double PhD who knew about the science, and he went and got his fish oil from a not good place that a lot of people shop at. I wouldn't say it wasn't reliable, and there was mercury in it, and he gave himself mercury poisoning.
Whoops.
Yeah, so it definitely with fish oil, it's got to be undetectable levels of mercury.
Yes.
It's got to be from a company that tests before, during, and after. It's just really got to be high standards.
Yes.
But there have been a lot of people that have gotten good relief from stress and anxiety and sometimes depression from having more robust levels of healthy omega-3s.
Mm. Well, as we are coming to this place, are there things that you would like to reiterate for our audience to really hone in on and be aware of, in addition to going to your website and finding you there?
Yeah, I'm so excited about the power of the subconscious mind. Again, the conscious mind is processing 40 bits of information per second. The subconscious mind is processing 40 million bits of information per second. So if you've been struggling with something that, hasn't responded to the neurofeedback, the biofeedback, the acupuncture, the chiropractic, it's definitely worth investigating, because I've found it to be very helpful for all kinds of issues: stress, PTSD issues, migraines, headaches, sleep disorders, all kinds of stuff. And yeah, life is a balance of a lot of things. So look at your life and see what needs shifting. We've talked about a lot of things just on the program today: grounding, being around people who support you and love you as much as possible. I know it's difficult when they're family members, but having good boundaries and not giving in to negative situations is an important piece of the puzzle as well.
I have loved going to chiropractic. It really helped me after I was in a car accident and just enjoyed the energy of the place. We have relocated, and I haven't been looking for somebody here yet. But I noticed with that I needed to continue to go. Do you find with hypnotherapy that after people have done 3 sessions that they are good for a while, they're good for a long time? I think it would also depend on what they were working on, but what have you kind of noticed with that?
Yeah, it really depends from person to person, but I've had many people that came in that just felt like their traps were rocks all the time, and they were constantly having to get acupuncture, constantly having to get chiropractic. And after they go and deprogram the thing because you can imagine a child who's stressed out, you don't have a lot of options available to you.
Right.
You have to put up with mommy, daddy, whatever's going on, whatever craziness is going on. So what do? You tighten up, you grind your teeth, you tense up, you try to disappear. So all of those trauma responses: fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Fawning is the people pleasing. I get lots of people pleasers, and they don't understand why they have to make sure everybody's okay before they take care of themselves. Well, it's just programming. And once that gets reprogrammed, then you have those nice, healthy boundaries where you can nourish and take care of yourself first, because if you don't have anything to give anybody else.
That's right. Yeah. Dr. Tara, I have loved meeting you. I've loved our conversations. I have loved going to YouTube and watching the little videos that you have there. I just so appreciate all of the goodness that you are putting out in the world and your valuable time this morning sharing this with our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. You're a delight. I'm so happy to have been here with you today.
Thank you. And to our audience, we say thank you for being here to the very end, soaking in all of the goodness. Thank you so much for opening up your mind and being open to the possibility of something different, something good, because you are here on earth at this time for a reason. It's not by accident at all. You are valuable, you are worthy, and just know that today is a special day. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time.